to give some examples, Jesus had compassion for people.
Yeah.
He was called to save people.
Yeah.
Jonathan in the Old Testament, he had a compassion, a love for David.
Mm-hmm.
He was called to help David.
Yeah.
So often what you have a compassion for, something that's, it pulls at your heart for this thing, that can be a link to this is something that wants you to do. Welcome back to the Made to Be Men podcast. Here again, my good friend Josh. Welcome back, second time.
I appreciate it, Christian.
And we're in a new environment.
Yep.
As you can see, this is my first episode not recording in my own house.
Yep.
So we're at your place today.
New beginnings.
This is a good setup. It's a
No,
nice
thank
place.
you. I appreciate it, Christian.
Thanks for having me into your home.
Thanks for bringing your stuff an hour and a half here.
You're welcome. So I've brought you back a second time.
Yep.
We've got some more topics to cover.
Indeed.
How have you been, first of all?
Been doing well. Been good. Yeah. Yeah, enjoying it. Yourself?
Good. Yeah, been good. So I didn't drop. So my goal was to put out an episode every week.
Correct.
The last 2 weeks I haven't put one out.
Yep.
So I've fallen short of my goal.
Mm-hmm.
However, I recorded another video earlier this week.
Yeah.
Which will drop this week. I'm recording right now. So I'm staying on top of things as much as I can.
Sure. So, okay, here's a question for you then, just impromptu. So how do you, for example, when you set yourself a goal and things don't go to plan, like in this instance, for example, what do you tell yourself in your mind to keep yourself going, to not like get hung up on the mistake, but to keep pushing forward?
That's a good question. I think when you have a goal, you see the end point. When you have a vision, when you see that end point, a small stumble on the way doesn't stop you from reaching the end point.
Yeah.
Like I remember, I heard a pastor say before, when you're driving home,
mm-hmm.
if there's traffic on the way, if there's a road closed on the way that you usually go down, do you just stop and give up, or do you keep going until you get home?
Yeah, I like that. You keep going. Yeah,
exactly. So I think it's the same thing when you have a vision. If you see the end point,
mm-hmm.
you keep going until you get there.
Good. And what's your, sorry to cut you off, for the people that maybe don't know, or just to reiterate, what's the vision?
Yeah, so the vision for this podcast particularly
mm-hmm.
is to help men be who God has created them to be.
Yeah.
And for them to walk with God.
Yeah.
And so it's to create a community of men that are encouraging each other to do that
mm-hmm.
long term. So for now, I'm just sharing things I've learned and bringing on kind of people like yourself who I know, are working through their walk with God as well, and sharing that for other people to listen to so they can be encouraged to walk with God.
Yeah, I like that.
So coming to purpose, which is one of the things we want to talk about today.
Yeah.
One of the biggest questions that people have is, what is my purpose? My specific purpose?
Yeah.
What is God's will for my life? Is that a question you've wrestled with?
Yeah, definitely a lot. I think you want to know that I guess the more you grow up, the more you know, and I don't say this as if I have like endless wisdom, but I guess the older you get, you realize the time that you have is limited. So with the time that you do have, you want to make it count. And what I mean by make it count is like use your time towards something which is in 20 years time you can look back and say, you know what, actually that was worthwhile doing. That was worthwhile pursuit of my time, my energy, my skills, my ability. So I think to answer your question, that's a question I think about a lot. I think that it's not an easy question. It's different for everyone, and it probably requires a lot of risk, a lot of humility to sometimes execute, to know your purpose, one, and number two, to execute upon your purpose. because I think they're two different things. One to know, another thing to go after it. I always think about it when it comes to Habakkuk 2:2. Write the vision, make it plain upon paper, so he who reads it may run. And like that verse is a very, not to be rude or anything, but it's a very simple verse. So like, write your vision down, write your goal down. It's one thing to know to write your goal down. It's another thing to actually action and write it down and keep it in front of you. So I think those two things are very different, to know and to action upon it. And I think sometimes in church it's very easy to know the Bible, to listen there, to sit, go through the motions in church, but to take action upon what your knowledge is something completely different.
So when it comes to your purpose, in terms of where you are right now, would you say you know your purpose? Are you still discovering it? How would you describe your current?
I think still discovering. And for me, what kind of keeps me going, or makes me feel comfortable that I'm somewhat in line with where I should be, is by the opportunities that I get, by the grace of God, the favor of God, and how like I get certain opportunities I wouldn't otherwise get. Maybe some people like my level don't get, or my age don't get. So I think those are sometimes, it's like a confirmation from God that you're on the right track, you're in the right area. But if I had to answer your question, like, do I know exactly what I'm called to do? Do I know when I get to heaven, when God says, like, Josh, did you fulfill your purpose? Like, I wouldn't be able to tell you the specifics of that. What about yourself?
I would say I'm still discovering as well.
Yeah.
Although I have some idea of it. Because I can't remember if I told you this or not, but one time last year, when I was driving home late at night, God told me that he wanted me to help men walk with him.
I didn't know that. That's good.
Yeah, I can't remember if I told you that. So I think that is a key aspect of my purpose.
Yeah.
Now, how exactly that looks, again, is a different question, because that could take many forms.
Yeah.
But, so that aspect of my purpose, I now know.
Yeah.
But I'm still discovering what other facets to it there are.
Yeah.
So there can be more than one aspect to your purpose.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Like, I think some people, a bit like building on what you said, so you can be called to be the best businessman in the world, the best leader, but at the same time, if you have kids, your calling is to be like a phenomenal father to your kids.
Exactly, yeah.
Set a good example. So I agree with you fully that it's not like a one-fold thing. You're just here for that and nothing else.
Yeah.
You're here to enrich the lives of the people around you as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking about this as well. Even the aspect of God's purpose, God's will for us that we find out, that we know, God doesn't tell you the full thing straight away.
Yeah.
For a number of reasons. I think the reason some things God keeps hidden is because it takes a certain level of maturity to be able to handle and use that thing well. Because you could ruin your own purpose by having knowledge too early.
Yes.
Because imagine if God told me everything that he had planned for me to do, and then I go and try and do it my own way, not God's way, and ruin the whole thing. That can happen. Even Abraham, see, God told him what he wanted him to have children, descendants.
Yeah.
Abraham tried to do it his own way, and had Ishmael.
Yeah.
So sometimes I do believe God keeps things hidden until a certain time, until you're ready to handle it. You could see it like, if I started a fund for my child the day they were born, and I'm putting money in that every day, but they can only access it once they're 18. So until they reach a particular level of maturity, to where they could handle that money and use it well, it's hidden for them. And it's revealed once they reach that. I think it could be similar.
No, I agree.
Things of God.
Definitely.
So I wrote down 7 things which I would call indicators to your purpose.
Yeah.
Or indicators of your destiny.
Yes.
So this is the first step of finding out what God has called you to do.
Yes.
These things, if applied to us, we're going to try and apply some to ourselves now, then it should help us know what God has called us to do.
Yep.
So let's go through these 7 things. So the first one is, what makes you angry?
Yep.
What makes you angry? What do you think about that first one?
I think it's a good way to start. Oftentimes, what frustrates you is probably driven by because you can see an easy solution. I know, for example, like some people, maybe like personal trainers, they're frustrated when people don't see their potential physically. So that's what drives them to want to help coach others, to help get other people moving, this, that, and the other. But on that, we have 7 indicators for your purpose written down in front of us. Mm-hmm. I don't think your purpose needs to like tick all the 7 boxes.
Yeah.
I think if it ticks like 2 or 3 of them, or maybe even 1, like that's still fine. And there's a company called Sequoia. It's one of like famous like VC funds.
All right.
And they have an interview. So when they interview people, they have different interview questions. So if you meet the mark, you get a tick, and you need to get certain ticks to get the job. But at the bottom of the interview sheet, there is a box that says doesn't meet criteria but has something special. And it's same for this. These are 7 indicators of your purpose, but at the same time, if you tick none of these boxes, that doesn't mean that your purpose isn't your purpose. Everyone finds it differently. Some may find these questions helpful. Some may be thinking like these are the worst 7 questions. So just throw that in there because it's different. It's different for everyone. What drives you, what your purpose is, how you're going to find it.
Yeah, that's a good point. So this list is not exhaustive, and it's not, it's not you need every single one of these either.
But
it's just...
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's just things that could help you. Indicators means it assists you in pointing in the direction. Yeah. It doesn't mean it's a definite 100%, this is it, purely that's it. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's guidelines in a way.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I would say the first question was, what makes you angry? Is something I didn't think about. When I think about my purpose, first and foremost, I always look back at when I was a kid, what did I do and just do like non-stop, right? Be it play football, do sports, you just love coding computers, playing piano. What was it that you always did? Because sometimes like what you enjoyed as a child is a good indicator of what you're good at. And oftentimes what you're good at is potentially what you're called to do, which is number 2.
So that's number 2 on the list, which we'll come to.
Yeah.
But yeah, last thing to say before we go into each one is, ultimately, you have to hear from God for yourself. Mm-hmm. But these things are hopefully going to help you do that. Yeah. So if we start with the first one, what makes you angry? So you said that wasn't something you really thought about. Yeah. Growing up, is that something you've considered now?
It is something I've considered now, but I think the other 6 questions are probably more, personally for me anyway, probably more relevant to my purpose. Yeah.
Do you know what makes me angry?
I don't. People not living their purpose?
So, very few things make me angry.
Yeah, yeah.
If you ask, have you ever seen me angry, would you say?
I think I'm frustrated but not angry.
Okay, fair. Yeah, that's why, angry is... Typically, I reserve anger for... when you just see something is of the devil, like he's destroying someone's life. It's that makes me angry.
Yeah, like bullying. I think like there's universal for me, probably like bullying.
Right.
Everyone Let's keep going. Don't let me cut
so
you off.
What I would put into that box though, frustrated, angry. We can put those similar, right? Coming back to kind of men in the church. Mm-hmm. When I see men, how can I say? I was going to say behaving really badly or really ungodly, or
What's an example?
For example,
it doesn't need to be like a like for like. It can just be like hypothetical if you want to preserve the integrity of the individual.
yeah, that's fine. I mean, okay, let's say men in the church not treating women in the church well.
Yeah.
In terms of maybe they're sleeping around in the church and just treating women casually.
Yeah.
That's just one example.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe men in the church completely lacking in integrity.
Mm-hmm.
They're just not representing God in any kind of way. They're stealing, they're lying, doing things that are just ungodly. And the reason I tie it to men, obviously it's bad in women as well.
Yeah.
But for me, there's just a strong sense on like, we're supposed to be leading the way in this, setting an example in this.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not modelling it as men, then it's going to be a struggle in terms of the church as a whole and the world. So I think there's a mandate on men, and we can do a separate video on what manhood and masculinity is.
Yeah.
I think that would be good, but I'll save that for a separate thing. But it's tied to that. When I see men not even pursuing God or attempting to become examples after Christ, that frustrates me.
Yeah.
It's not that we can't fall short, we do.
Yeah.
But at least that should be what we're striving towards.
Yeah, I agree.
So I say that's one. Number 2 is, what are you good at?
Yep. Oftentimes what you're good at is where you'll make a lot of money, like financially. So if you're good at like woodwork, you can sell products quite well, sell furniture well. You're good at coding, I'm sure you'll be your service will be in demand and you'll get paid because of your quality. Likewise, as a footballer, the better you are, the more you probably get paid. More or less. I think what you're good at definitely drives where your purpose is. Joab was a great army commander. That's probably was his purpose, to be David's army commander.
Could you be good at something and it have nothing to do with your purpose?
Yeah. Yes.
This is where it gets a bit
for sure.
tricky, isn't it? Because
I think there are some people that are just great at a lot of things. And not to say it's like a negative, it is phenomenal to be great at a lot of things, but it does make it a little bit tricky sometimes if you want to know where you want to go. Yeah.
Because that's the thing with having talent or being good at certain things.
Yeah.
One, it's not clear if that means it is definitely your purpose.
Yeah.
And it can also lead to you trusting in your ability in that thing, rather than in God. So that's why this one can be a little bit tricky to navigate. But typically, I would say God has given you a talent for a reason. And even if it's not directly your purpose, you may find that once you find what your purpose is, it's incorporated in it somehow.
Yeah.
It's brought in. So it is a sign for yourself. Was there anything you were particularly good at that you were like, yeah, this could be it?
Probably when I was younger, I thought I could be a footballer. Not to say I was good, but like I was, maybe I was alright here and there. I would say I fit into more of the other questions, but also maybe good at business. So even from like the basics, the most rudimentary entrepreneurial idea when you're in primary school, secondary school is to just bulk buying chewing gum and selling it. And then that went on to, whenever we go back to Malaysia, I'd try and go there with an empty luggage, bring as little clothing as possible, fill up with like fake Nike shoes. I think at the time it was like Air Max 90s or something like that. And then when I got home, I'd list it on eBay and just, started import-export of replica Nike products.
Yeah, I was going to say fake. Yeah.
So, something, I would say I was good at it, but I also enjoyed it. a lot. I enjoyed like the thrill that somebody saw my products online and were willing to put like their hard-earned money to purchase it. So, what am I good at? Yeah, I'd say that.
Yeah, because you've started quite a few businesses over the years. You know, some haven't worked out, some and have, but I think there is something there. Like you have you're good at that.
Yes, and so I would say, if you look at like the soft skills behind it, it's more courage and more when it doesn't work, just getting back up. So I don't necessarily. I think it doesn't take like a genius to work out. If you buy something for £10, sell it for £20, you make £10, right?
Yeah.
So, but it does take courage to try and like ask people how I know you're selling £15, but were you willing to do it for 10 if I buy like 20 units or something? So I think it's more when you break everything down, it's like the technical ability doesn't matter as much as the
courage,
all that sort of
persistence
stuff.
behind it. Yeah.
I'll say persistence is a very good one as well.
Yeah.
Probably something I should work on.
Oh, that's a good point. But yeah, what do you think I'm good at?
Football. I think you're good at. You've got good temperament in the sense that when, let's say for example, you had like a emergency tragedy, you wouldn't lose your head. So I think you're quite good at being able to see a situation from quite like a rational perspective.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So a friend of ours called Joel, I remember he had an interview with, he went to Imperial and studied medicine, and his interview they said, if in this situation, what would you do? And oftentimes universities, they're not looking for like, I'm gonna get my scalpel out, I'm gonna like cut XYZ, da 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 da. They're just looking for like a logical train of thought, because when you're like 18 years old applying for uni, no one knows all this sort of stuff. And Joel's logical train of thought was, I'll take a step back, I'll pray about it, and then I'll execute. I think sometimes it's a bit like what Joel did is what you'd do. You'd take a step back, you'd pray about it, and then you'd execute what you think is best or how you feel is best way to go about it. So I'd say that's what you're good at. But on the other hand, what do you think you're good at?
I agree with that. Firstly, kind of remaining composed under difficult circumstances. I mean, thankfully, I've not had anything too tragic happen in my life. But yeah, so I'll say that's one. Another thing I'm good at, I think teaching. You know, I've always enjoyed that, and this actually ties a bit back to the what makes you angry, frustrated one.
Yeah.
Because one thing that I wouldn't say makes me angry, but I just really don't like, is when I try and explain something and someone doesn't get it.
Yeah. I can imagine that's frustrating. Yeah.
And it's more, I see it as, did I explain it well enough?
Yeah.
Not that I'm blaming them, but more, I want to be able to teach and explain something well enough that someone can get it easily. And so if they don't get it, is that because I haven't done that very well? And I think it comes back to generally I do think I am good at that.
Yeah.
And I've just had an interest to, read the word and try and get into the depth of it and be able to explain it. So I say that's one.
Sure. So off the cuff, you had to give someone 3 pointers to be a good teacher. What would they be?
The first one I would say is you need knowledge and understanding. You can only teach something if you understand it well yourself. It sounds basic, but sometimes people try and teach. Someone could try and teach something which they haven't really properly thought through. Yeah. I've done that before. It doesn't work out well. But and in terms of the things of God, teaching the word and things like that, so you have to spend time in the word. You have to meditate on it. You have to study it. Be a student of the word. Yeah. Because I was thinking about this, how it's amazing to me how some Christians, they could have a great career. Yeah. Let's say they're maybe a doctor or a lawyer, an architect, you've become an expert in something.
Yeah.
From maybe 7 years of study or whatever. You've been a Christian for 15 years. How are you not an expert in the Bible? Do you know what I mean? Like, if you're reading it every day, as you should.
Yeah.
Is it like we should be experts in the Bible? Now, I know there are some theologians who are experts in the Bible and don't really know God. That's a different question, because we should mix it with faith as well and that relationship with God. But in terms of the knowledge aspect of it, if we're taking time to study other things closely and to understand them, to become an expert, why do we not do that with things of God?
I think you're right. I'm trying to think of a counter argument, but I can't really come up with one. I do agree.
But that's what I mean. It should be the case. So, going back to your question, what was it? 3 points?
Yeah, so number 1, you said knowledge, understanding. Number 2?
Number 2, I would say just as I'm about to make this point, I'm stumbling over my words because I was going to say communicate.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously you have to be able to explain the thing once you understand it. And that, when I was younger, I wasn't that great at communicating. Yeah. And even now, I'm practicing. Really. It's developing over time.
I'd also say when you communicate without jargon. So like, if we roll all the way back to the start, like explain righteousness without using the word like salvation, right standing. Just because when you're like new to church or whatever, those are like the churchy kind of words. So
yeah, that's a good point.
So just like avoid using jargon, especially in a work context when you're trying to talk to the client. The fastest way to make your client feel like an idiot is to use the most complex like terminology. Like, be it whether like you're a surgeon, like you mentioned, you're in banking, whatever. Just keep it. Basic.
I think sometimes we can get focused on the super spiritual aspect of things to where we don't deal with just some natural things. Like, we need to learn to communicate. For myself, I found, listening back to my old videos, I say so and like too much. And it's a common thing, but it's just, so I need to practice, learn how to communicate and how best to say things to where people can receive it and it comes across better. But to do that, you have to look at a natural thing and just try and improve yourself.
Yeah, agreed. So you mentioned the first 2 points of what you would consider makes a good teacher. What's the final point you got for us?
I'd say the final point is to be able to understand or see things from other people's perspective. So the people that you're teaching in particular. Because it's very easy to just see things from your view, like you get this, and so you want them to get it, and you're wondering why they don't get it. But really, it may have taken you years and years of study and praying and meditation for you to really understand that thing. So you can't really expect that someone else is going to get it in 10 minutes of you explaining it. So I would say seeing things from other people's point of view, the people that you're teaching in particular.
No, that's good. All right, if we jump onto the 7 indicators to your purpose, number 3 we have what are you interested in? And I think this kind of links into number 2, so what you're good at. So for example, for a bit of context, I sent Christian a quiz earlier this week. It was a Messi Ronaldo quiz. It was on BBC. And I pinged it over to him. It was 8 questions. This guy got 8 out of 8. It's 100%. And he messaged me after saying, all that time, it was finally, all the time I spent researching all the stats actually came in useful. So what are you interested in? If you like football, you're most likely going to have the most knowledge in that area. And if you have knowledge in the area, potentially your purpose potentially drives what you're interested in and where you should take that interest further.
Yeah, again, it's not foolproof, if you like, in terms of I could be interested in football and not necessarily have a calling football. It's just something I enjoy watching or following.
I would agree.
However, there could be an overlap with your purpose. You know, I'm interested in what manhood is and what masculinity is. So, and that's part of what I'm called to do. So in that sense, there's an overlap. But is there anything for you that you have a strong interest in, which you think might be part of your purpose?
I was going back to the business point. Personally, for me, I was always interested in business books, or business like documentaries. There's this YouTube channel called Finaeus, Finaus, I think it's spelled, and basically it just runs through how different asset managers got to where they are. So, for example, could be Steve Schwartzman, how we started Blackstone. Could be Howard Marks, Oaktree Capital Management. So for me, that was interesting how these people built their careers, and as a result, built their businesses. I think that's what I found interesting. Always found football interesting, and different. Yeah, probably sports and business. I say were the two things that kept recurring over the years.
Oh, that's good. So yeah, what you're interested in is one of the indicators.
Yeah.
Shall we go on to number 4? So there's some overlap with interest, but it's slightly different.
Yeah.
And what do you desire? That's number 4. What you desire. How would you distinguish that from what you're interested in?
Oh, okay. If I say what do you desire, there's some people which are, maybe this isn't the best example, but let's say they're the son to their dad's company, then they become CEO. So they desire to have the same respect that their dad had. So they may not be interested in the business like their dad was, or like somebody else maybe, but they desire to have influence in that area.
Right.
So I think what you desire is something which you're trying to achieve, whereas something you're interested in is just something you do without. It's something you just do naturally.
Yeah. Because you see, some people could have a desire for a particular aspect of ministry, maybe.
Yeah.
You know, like some people want a healing ministry. They have a strong desire for that.
Mm-hmm.
Some people have a strong desire for the prophetic.
Yeah.
Some people have a strong desire for maybe talking about finance in the kingdom.
Yeah.
So there's a link with interest, but I think it's a bit deeper than that. It's like a desire, a longing within you for something.
Yeah.
Now, desire, though, can be, how can I say, maybe twisted, or like it could be wrong desire.
Yeah.
So how would you know if a desire is an indicator of your purpose rather than a selfish desire?
Probably just go back to the source, right? Go back to the Bible. Find scripture to back up what your desire is. If it's like a godly desire, then that's probably something to aim for. But I think it should be fairly like black and white to distinguish, is this a godly desire or not? What are your thoughts? I know that wasn't the most comprehensive answer, but what do you think?
No, that's fine. I think that's correct. I would also add 2 things. One, it goes back to what I said about longevity before. I think if it's a desire from God, it will stay there.
Yeah.
It will not just... Because, you can have a desire that is just for a short time because you watched a video online.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly you have a desire to do this thing. But then after a little while, it goes... That wasn't from God. It was just you saw a video that was interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think God's desire in your heart will be consistent.
Yep.
And stay for a time.
Mm-hmm.
And then tied to that, it's there when you're seeking God, which we spoke about earlier as well. I think, what is that scripture? Delight yourself in the Lord and he will give you the desires of your heart. So it's linked to delighting yourself in God.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could say seeking God and the things of him. And so if you've got those 2 things and there's a strong desire that's consistently there, it's probably a sign of that's something God is calling you to go into, I would say.
Yep.
Yeah, so, okay, number 5 then. What do you have a heart for? Or what tugs at your heart?
Yeah.
What do you think about that one?
I think it's like a combination of 1 to 4.
Yeah.
I think maybe what makes you angry, what you're good at, what you're interested in.
Yeah. I mean, in a way, I think really this is more. It's very close to 6.
Yeah. Okay. So number 6 is, what do you love and what do you have compassion for, or who do you love? Who do you have compassion for?
Yeah, because often what you have a heart for is what you have compassion for.
Yeah.
And what you hate. So maybe there's slight differences here, but we've listed them separately. However, you could link them together very strongly, because I think, to give some examples, Jesus had compassion for people.
Yeah.
He was called to save people.
Yeah.
Jonathan in the Old Testament, he had a compassion, a love for David. He was called to help David.
Yeah.
So often what you have a compassion for, something that's, it pulls at your heart for this thing, that can be a link to, this is something God wants you to deal with.
Yeah.
So have you ever had that for yourself? Or is there anything you would say you feel that?
I think there's always when it comes to like children, when like for example like Sunday school, you want to help them understand, help them be able to explain certain things to them in a way that they can comprehend it and go to school and then live like the values that you put in them. So I think always like children have, no matter what age you are, you're gonna have like some form of a soft spot for a child.
Yeah.
If a child goes to you like, I would like, this is my business plan, would you like to invest in it? And a 50-year-old goes to you, this is business plan. You're more likely going to have more compassion. You're going to be more understanding. You're going to accept more flaws in a business plan from a kid than you are a 50-year-old, just because they are a kid.
Yeah.
So I think always, like, for myself anyways, I used to do children's church, and that was very rewarding. And I sponsor a child in Indonesia. Whenever he sends me letters, the waterworks just get me going straight away. I know he's not the one writing; he draws like pictures of houses or whatnot. But yeah, something for children. And I thought about this for a while, because I don't know much about like kids TV programs apart from like Phineas and Ferb, and I think it's got like pros and cons. But being able to, was always an idea in the back of my mind. What if somebody could create like a program that instills like good values into children, not just when they're like 0 to 4 years old, but when they're 4 to 12, something which is cool in their eyes. Because I think when you're 12 and under, you just want to be, well, maybe like 16 and under, you just want to be cool, right? It's like a program which subtly feeds good values.
That's a really good idea. I think a lot of the content nowadays for kids it's not the best. So yeah, that's a good one. I think for myself, one thing I have compassion for is people who have had father wounds or issues resulting from their father.
Yeah.
In terms of whether their father was absent, or maybe their father didn't necessarily treat them well.
Yeah.
But they have issues coming from that.
Mm-hmm.
And you see this in both men and women.
Yeah.
It's a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
And this is another reason why we need more, Christian godly men.
Yeah.
Because they need to be fathers. And fathers need to be in the home. And so that's one for me, which I feel strongly for. Okay, so we're going on to the final one. Number 7 is, what brings you peace?
Yeah.
And this might be the most important one.
Yep, potentially.
So how would you describe this one? How, in terms of how it plays out, how would you apply it to yourself?
I was thinking about this. So if you are at your most, when people say, you have to understand everyone's got a different definition of peace. So if your version of peace is being on a beach with hearing the waves, that's probably a very different peace to some people. Like, I know some of my So my friends and my colleagues, they are most in the zone, most in peace when everything's on fire. And that's like when the best version of them comes out, and they love it. They love the buzz they get from that. So I think you have to understand what your peace means for you. And everyone's version of peace is very different. But there's a peace, like the heart peace, which is also entirely different to any peace on the external side of things. I think you only find that peace when you spend time in the Word of God. And it's weird because you could be spending time in the Word of God, you could have that heart peace, and everything around you could be going like one day good, one day bad, one day good, but you still have that peace throughout. So I'm not too sure if peace is entirely linked. I think it is linked with purpose, but there's a peace that comes with understanding the Word of God. And I know the answer to that, again, is kind of like a zigzag to the question you asked me. But what are your thoughts in terms of what brings you peace, and how can you relate that to your purpose?
I think you make a good point about what peace means, firstly. All of these, all 7 of them, are predicated on you seeking God first.
Yeah.
Because if you're not doing that, your desires won't make sense. What you're interested in could just be from your flesh. Yeah. What makes you angry could just be your flesh.
Yeah.
Could even be something demonic. Mm-hmm. So the foundation of you seeking God first is what then gives these indicators credibility, I would say. So in terms of peace, you're right, it is that supernatural heart peace, to be clear. And I think the way it plays out is, for example, you might have a job offer.
Yeah.
On paper, it looks good. Mm-hmm. It's more money. It's a shorter commute.
Yeah.
Maybe remote, whatever. All the stuff you were looking for is there. However, when it comes down to it, something in you just doesn't feel comfortable with this job.
Yeah, that's a good example.
I think it's especially important when it all seems to make sense. Mm-hmm. When you don't have peace in that situation, that's when I think it's an indication from God that it's not His will for you.
Yeah.
Now, likewise, it could be a job doesn't make sense, but then there's something in you drawing you to it. Like just a supernatural peace about the job, even though it's less money. You have to move somewhere you don't know.
Yeah.
But when you pray about it, there's a peace. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's a sign God is calling you to that thing.
Yeah.
So I think those are some examples of how it would indicate what God wants for you or not. But yeah, have you ever had a situation like that? Maybe you didn't feel peace about something, or you did feel peace about something and you believe it was God?
I think with the job thing, there's definitely times when, like when I qualified as a chartered accountant, I was looking at roles outside of audit, which was the department I was in. And when you see some job descriptions, you get that initial like rush of excitement, like, oh, could this be the one? Could that be the one? But then like after that, you have the time you spend, you pray about this. And I think once you get over your initial like euphoria or like down of that job, then you really understand in your heart if this is where you want to be or what you want to do.
Yeah, this is one of the things I mentioned in my other video on seeking God. Is that how often do people take a job without asking God whether this is the job for them? Or you could say without having peace about the job.
Yeah. Sorry, go on.
No, go ahead.
So Ben mentioned you should only take a job, move to university where there's a good church. Do you think, let's say for example, somebody says, I have peace about moving here, but then there's no church in like 20-mile radius. Your thoughts on church when it comes to purpose?
I think as a general rule, I agree with the principle that if there's no church, no good church nearby, it's probably not the right decision.
Mm-hmm.
Because part of what God has called you to do is be part of a local church.
Yeah.
Now, are there exceptions? Well, yeah, if you're called to be a missionary in the middle of nowhere, there's probably not going to be a church there, right? However, that's different from you moving to a new city for a job.
Yeah.
And you thinking, yeah, there's no church there, but I believe God has just called me to take this job.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, really? I'm not sure. I would question that. So, peace is not the sole indicator. I would say it's an important one.
Yep.
You should have peace. You should follow the peace if you know you're seeking God.
Mm-hmm.
But it comes back to, you mentioned already, what does the word say? That's your ultimate foundation, your guideline.
Yeah.
And if the word talks about us being planted in the house of God, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves, then you can't discard that when it comes to deciding your job, your purpose, what you think you have peace about. They have to work together. So that's what I would say about that. But what do you think?
No, I agree with you. I think it's not just like a one question thing, and then you take the box and you go forward. I think it's a combination of things and I think that combination gives you peace as well.
Yeah.
But likewise, at the same time, it could just be one overall thing that gives you peace. So it's pretty dynamic.